A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us on this edition of Spectrum Extra. We're live on Radio 1 FM 90. I have a panel of four today to reflect on some of the major events of the week. My name is Kenneth Anderson Lukwago, your host, and I want to, break down some of the issues that we are going to look at. One, we are going to look at the major happenings at the Kyankwanzi retreat. Well, the NRM, the individuals elected under the NRM party as members of parliament and those elected as independents but have chosen to align with the NRM spent some time at the National Leadership Institute at Kyankwanzi as part of their induction. They were addressed by other people, including President Yoweri Museveni, who talked about some key issues that we will be looking at during the course of this discussion. Some of the major happenings, of course, included that spark we saw between Speaker Anita Among and Norbert Mao. But the major talking point is the announcement by President Yoweri Museveni that 40 billion shillings will be shared out by the group, which each pocketing 100 million shillings. Now, a number of stakeholders have questioned the source of this money, the motive, and some people have said actually it contradicts repeated warnings that the president gave to the same people attending the meeting to avoid engaging in corruption. The president talked about that issue several times. Now, the opposition says this is part of the strategy, the carrot and stick strategy, to weaken parliament, which they say must be independent and capable of holding the executive to account. During the same meetings, President Museveni was heard warning members of parliament, those would be members of parliament, against blocking his proposals to the House, saying that that would not be tolerated. So we'll be looking at the major happenings at the Kyankwanzi retreat to try to come to terms with what this means for Parliament as they prepare to swear in. We'll be looking at the protection of the National Sovereignty Bill 2026. Now, despite calls from different stakeholders to avoid this bill completely, the executive went ahead and tabled it before Parliament. Now, some of the key aspects in this bill include restricting foreign influence. The bill aims to bar foreigners from recruiting and engaging or partnering with Ugandans to influence public affairs, including politics. It also defines an agent of a foreigner as anyone acting under the direction of a foreigner. Those include NGOs that are receiving funding from foreigners, individual organizations receiving foreign support of a certain threshold of about 400 million and above. They require prior written approval from the Minister of Internal Affairs. If convicted for breaching this law, one could face up to 20 years in prison or a fine of 2 billion shillings or both. Now, there's a clause 13 which proposes severe penalties for publishing information considered to damage the country's economic system, which will impact on media and financial analysts. Now, the law potentially classifies all Ugandans living abroad as foreigners or agents, and they require approval for remittances to the family members. The NRM Parliamentary Caucus has already backed this law. Parliament has invited the public for comments starting next week, sometime next week. Many people are worried about this bill, but the government says it is going to go ahead with it. So we'll be looking at this issue also in detail to understand whether it's necessary or whether there are no adequate laws to deal with the issues that the government is concerned about. Let me introduce the guests. The Honorable Emmanuel Lumala Dombo, Director of Communication at the NRM Secretariat, former Bunyole East MP, fresh from Kyankwanzi. Good evening, Honorable Dombo. It's a pleasure having you on Spectrum Extra.
Thank you very much. Good evening to our viewers and listeners. It's a pleasure for me to be back on Spectrum. Very fresh from Kyankwanzi. And I believe by the end of the interaction, we shall be able to appreciate what transpired in Kyankwanzi, why it did happen that way, and what the people of Uganda should expect.
I've had you clearing your throat from the bull roasting fats that you were enjoying in Kyankwanzi.
No, Kyankwanzi, you know,
because it's one of the rituals, one of the things you do there. You roast bulls.
You know, Kyankwanzi is a cattle corridor. If you don't roast bulls, what else would you roast? Unless you wanted us to carry pigs there and they roast pork, which is would be haram because we were there with people who don't eat pork. Myself, I've taken time without eating it. So it is in order for us to roast bulls at a time for roasting bulls.
There were very interesting issues there, including people complaining about accommodation, the number of people were in rooms. We saw some people actually running away from the retreat and saying, I cannot stay in a room with 5 people, 4 people.
You know, those who are going to Kyankwanzi now can afford to do that. But let them ask those who were in Kyankwanzi in the early 80s and 90s, and they see what Kyankwanzi was and how people used to construct their own andachi or mama ingia pole, and that is the best that was available. So to see people fighting for rooms, heated water in Kyankwanzi, and the type of accommodation and the extravaganza that is there at times, you can't look backwards and say those who founded Kyankwanzi, when it first started, then should part their chests because they made a contribution, they laid a foundation. And for us, we are happy that we were there when we were not quarreling for rooms. Now, let those who can quarrel for rooms
our second panelist,
do so.
Our second panelist is Mr. Timothy Chemonges, Executive Director, Parliamentary Watch, and he's also a same position at the Center for Policy Analysis. A man who has 2 jobs, Chemonges. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Anderson. Good evening, and good evening to Dombo and to all the listeners. I'm happy to be here.
All right. We expect to be joined shortly by Dr. Sarah Bireete, the Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance, Pandit on Governance and Human Rights Issues, and the Honorable Paul Mwiru, who is the MP-elect Jinja Southeast. He's a lawyer and coordinator of the National Unity Platform in the whole of Busoga region. Well, let's begin with you, Honorable Dombo. Kyankwanzi, you went there, had meetings, President spoke, warned against corruption. But at the end of the day, all the things which were said and done at Kyankwanzi seem to have been watered down by the sudden decision by President Yoweri Museveni to announce that kitty of 40 billion shillings. 40 billion shillings, some people have said, enough to construct several classrooms, equip health center force, recruit teachers or medical workers in facilities that do not have. But the president is giving it out to people who have not even taken oath of office. What could be going on Honorable Dombo?
You know, every time people talk about equipment, talk about facilities, they forget that the human beings are the most important people in this country. So anything that is given to protect the mankind and the humanness, to enable them to make better contribution, at times it is overlooked. That is why many people, when it comes to the human capital development, they misunderstand what it is meant to be. And when you go to many countries, you can get many countries which have done a lot of construction, but when they haven't invested money in their people. First of all, I had one media house saying that breaking news, and they were announcing that money given by the president. I said, what is breaking news? This was a live broadcast by His Excellency the President. We have, for me as Director of Information, I was given money by the party, and I had paid for airtime on about 15 televisions and a number of radio stations that were broadcasting the president's speech. That is how transparent we are as a party. And some of our sessions, which previously were private and confidential, some of them were being streamed live on the media houses. So the president, in his own magnanimity and unpreempted, decided that these young people, because he had already heard through his intelligence that banks had already started offering loans to people who were indebted because of their campaigns, and this could easily derail them. And when they begin their work, they could easily get involved in the corrupt practices because of the condition in which they may be. So the president, out of his wisdom and magnanimity, said bailing out these young people early enough would be such a good idea. And for us, what we used to do when I was a commissioner in Parliament, like I said on other media houses, that I used it to plead for the members of parliament, all of them, whenever we had a problem in parliament because of the variable interest rates that we had, so that we could get a bailout. Many people who see MPs getting vehicles now don't know that for us, when we were in parliament, we were being given a loan by government. We would pay back money given to us. We would pay it back in the consolidated fund. In the 6th parliament, we received the 65 million as a loan from government for us to buy vehicles. But progressively, common sense came to everybody and said, but members of parliament are given vehicles to facilitate them in order to do government work, like RDCs, permanent secretaries, commissioners of government, and other officials of government. Why would you facilitate one arm of government and you don't facilitate the other? So, the president, because of what he had heard, and could be because of history, you know, you saw members of parliament who were arrested and incarcerated in prison for a number of days. Even during that same meeting, you saw the president talk about one of the members.
Not all of them. Not all of them.
What do you mean by not all of them?
What I'm trying to suggest is that it could have been because these people went their way to be corrupt. So you cannot use the example of those few MPs to justify for the entire
it is those few
parliament.
it is only those few MPs who went and pleaded and acknowledged that they had done wrong and sought forgiveness. That's what the president said, and they volunteered to become witnesses of government, but also expose the ways through which many things had been happening. That's what the president told us. I hope you're on TV and you're watching. So in some of these things, it is a tricky situation. The question is, what do you... The president, by the way, had talked of amnesty even during the parliamentary session where the MPs demanded for blood. He said, now I'm aware that some members of parliament have been conniving with officials in the Ministry of Finance and they have been fleecing government. He said, I have evidence. And he said, unless you young people will work out an amnesty in order. Then the people said they wanted to see blood. And the following week, they arrested the members of parliament. And the same members of parliament started pleading to say others went to him, others apologized, and a lot has been happening. A lot happens behind the scenes. But for us, who are in Kyankwanzi, this issue of 20 million, which has so far been given to members of parliament elect.
They have already received.
They received the 20 million. You had the president saying, I'm going to give you 20
million.
And the 80 will be paid in the long run. It may take a year, it may take 2 years, it may be paid annually. I don't know. Because it is the president, he hasn't yet given us the mechanism of how it is going to be paid. But the 20 million was given to the members, they have received it. Those who haven't received it may be because they have not been around. And the national treasurer of the party was instructed that they pay to the members of the party, which she has already done.
Where is this money coming from? From which vote?
NRM has a number of sources. Our biggest source is government. Our biggest source of money as a party. Because of the number of members of parliament that we have, every quarter we receive about 8.3 billion shillings. Now, with the numbers of members of parliament increasing, this amount is likely to be more than 10 billion in the coming year every quarter that will be received from government, shared in the numerical strength of the members of parliament. Other parties also receive this money, and perhaps you may need to bring here the leaders of the parties so that they can tell the public how they spend their money and what they spend their money on. So
this is money from the NRM party, not from the consolidated fund. Is that what you're trying to say?
No, this is money which has been given by the government, by President Museveni. I strongly believe, because I haven't asked, because when the president announced there, we are all there. And the president has directed the national treasurer to pay the money to the members of parliament. It may have been from the consolidated fund. It may have been from the party fund. But even the money that comes to Parliament, comes to the NRM party through the iPod, comes from the consolidated fund.
That's understandable, but once it has left the consolidated fund to the NRM, it becomes a party resources. I'm looking at a situation where you're dipping your hands in the consolidated fund the way it is now.
Us dipping hands in the consolidated fund?
Yes.
Don't disparage the president.
No, there should be
the president is the chief executive, and he can only utilize money which has been expended and budgeted for. That is what the president does. To say that the president dips a hand, it means he goes to the consolidated fund and takes out money that has not been expended and budgeted for. That cannot happen in Uganda because members of parliament have a budget. Even when the president may require to use money, he may access it through a number of ways, through donation, through money which is voted for State House,
through supplementary budget.
Even when it is supplementary budget, it is money that is appropriated by Parliament of Uganda
within the law.
But to impute that the president can dip his hands into the coffers to fund party activities, that would be
there's one senior minister who actually made a statement and suggested that the president had sold his cows, and that's where the money is coming from. I don't know whether that could be right.
I think that was making a joke.
A joke?
Absolutely, because the president has dissuaded members of parliament from selling their own cows to fund politics. Why would the president sell his own cows to do that?
Magnanimous, like you said.
His magnanimity over resources that have been put in his charge and deliberately appropriated to fund certain activities like fundraisings, like donations. The president, as a chief executive, is enabled to do that. But I've also heard about people who have been talking like that. To me, as a spokesperson of the party, I've attentively listened to President Museveni, and he has repeatedly dissuaded members of parliament and other politicians not to use their personal money to fund public affairs, because they are in these positions to serve the public. All
right, let's go to Mr. Chemonges. Mr. Chemonges, you're always in the corridors of parliament. And I want to hear from you as an analyst. What does this mean for Parliament when head of the executive, which is supposed to be held to account by the institution of Parliament, announces a relief and says each one of you is going to receive 100 million shillings? What does this mean?
Thank you, Kenneth. So starting from that, it's the first time seeing the president making it public in terms of
live on TV
on how much he's going to give to the members of parliament
unchained
and being very clear and categorical even in terms of how he's going to pay that money, and you may want to look at it as, from the magnanimity point of view, but I think for me the most important thing is around 5 areas. First is around, I think, the confused way of us looking at the priorities at the country level. I think that our consideration of priorities is something that is still lacking, and this clearly demonstrates where our priorities lies. Because if you have 40 billion shillings and you have an ordinary citizen out there dealing with poor healthcare, dealing with poor education system, we are having poor infrastructure in some of these urban areas and many of those other challenges. It demonstrates the lack of clear priorities. 50 billion could easily put a proper healthcare system in many of these districts and places.
But Dombo tells you this is not money from the consolidated fund, it's money from the party.
Absolutely.
Money that has already been given to the NRM. They also raise their own funds.
So Dombo
they have different sources.
Dombo says that they receive close to 8 billion or thereabout. You need close to 5 years to get to those amounts of money. But also more importantly, in terms of just the just concluded elections and the just concluded year leading to the elections, there are concerns from political parties for not having received their disbursements as far as the law is concerned. So it's also very interesting to see that NRM received its share before the rest could get. The other, for me, and most important, is around the contradiction in anti-corruption messaging. That you have the president coming out very clearly, and this may not be necessarily directly treated as a corruption matter, but by the fact that this money is given out towards the end of a retreat, it comes off as a means of trying to compromise, as a way of managing, as a way of exercising patronage among the people that are receiving these amounts of money. And so I think it's purely the patronage system of politics, where you have the executive still have some level of control over members of his party. And so when I look at, when I discuss the contradiction in anti-corruption cases, you see the president on the one hand encouraging members of parliament to be frugal, to not be corrupt, to saying we are going to be extremely firm on matters corruption. On the other hand, we see the president making public statements that a few of members who were arrested came and he forgave them. He arrested a few.
Even before they were convicted.
So there is a fundamental problem in terms of how the president deals. And I think that fundamentally goes into how our priorities, but also the use of public resources. Of course, where does this leave Parliament? Definitely you see that with these sort of actions, you link it with some of those that we've seen in the past. It clearly indicates to you that Parliament has now properly been an extension of the executive, and with this, it's really to align and put them in line, so that when he says jump, the question is why, is how high, and of course, lastly, maybe as we go into the break, it's a strategy by the president to consolidate power, which I think he has understood over the years. And I know that he puts effort in areas that are of interest.
All right, let's go for that break. Keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090. Tell us what you think about these major happenings at the Kyankwanzi retreat, and do you think President Yoweri Museveni is serious about fighting corruption with this kind of overture to the members of parliament? Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. We continue after this break. Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing major events of the week. We are looking at the major happenings that have occurred at the Kyankwanzi NRM retreat, where there were a number of key issues, including that, clash between Norbert Mao and incumbent speaker, the Honorable Anita Among, President Yoweri Museveni talking tough there against corruption and warning the MPs elect from engaging in corruption. But then, ends the retreat by announcing a kitty that is totaling to about 40 billion shillings to each member, with each member receiving 100 million shillings. I have a panel of four, the two so far in the House, including Mr. Chemonges, Executive Director, Parliamentary Watch and the Center for Policy Analysis. Also in studio, the Honorable Emmanuel Lumala Dombo, Director of Communication at the NRM Secretariat, is a former Bunyole East Member of Parliament. We expect Dr. Bireete, Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance, to join us shortly, and the Honorable Paul Mwiru, MP-elect Jinja South East, is also the coordinator of the National Unity Platform Party in Busoga region. Honorable Dombo, Mr. Chemonges raises a very interesting issue as he compares the action of the president to give the money to the incoming MPs and the warnings he has been making about corruption. Some people say they seem not to be matching. He's telling them something else and doing completely something else, indicating to them that you can receive money even when you have not done anything at all. Because they have done nothing. They have not even been sworn in. How do you, bring that?
Our listeners, many people keep wondering. Yesterday I was one of them on media houses, and the other time, and we have a copy of the resolutions. If you want, I'm going to leave you a copy here with you, if you don't have one. In Kyankwanzi, we debated, discussed a number of things. Some of them were live, Some of them were streamed live during the media houses. Some of them were in the president's speech, which was live in the opening and closing. And some have been wondering why has the media chosen only on the Maobabs versus the Right Honorable Speaker Anita Monk, and then the issue of the money. They are wondering, wasn't there sense in the issues that were discussed so that we could discuss such issues with them? That is something that has been asked. But now,
you know the popular saying, when a dog bites a man, that's no news. But when a man bites a dog, that's the news.
So since you...
So those two issues captivated everyone, including the people attending the retreat.
Since you people...
I'm sure even you, Honorable Dombo,
who are in the media have chosen that we discuss the issue of the money, we can only discuss it to the extent that we are informed or knowledgeable about. On the other areas, it will be basically speculation. I want to tell you that the president is one of the most informed people in the country about the status of affairs, especially on what banks are doing, what his members are doing. Some of them behind the scenes get to him and say they have been arraigned before courts of law. They want the party to help them because they are our candidates. We must get lawyers for them during the petitions. You had a lady from Namisindwa who says they are alleging that she's a Kenyan.
Yeah, after me, Papa. That's what he said.
Yeah.
Daddy, they want to finish me.
Daddy, they want to finish
Interesting
me.
thing.
So there were a number of things that were raised by members of parliament. And given an opportunity, if President Museveni actually had sat in a corner and people went there individually to say their own things, you just don't know what Dombo would have said. Because I also have my issues, perhaps, but because I'm not a member of parliament, I'm a servant of the party. I can only to the extent of my salary and the things that I must do.
So the president warns them against corruption and then gives them money.
He had to cushion them because he already knows that there are members of parliament who are already now, who have signed over 500 million. They had money lenders and they had their properties and houses that could have been mortgaged or sold by the money lenders. Were it not that the president can magnanimously either stand in to help them, or the members of parliament themselves, even before they have sworn in, they have signed up with some banks to access credit, which is already very expensive and may not lead them not to do their work properly. Should
we, the general public, suffer because of individual decisions they invested in the election?
Money which has been appropriated by parliament and scheduled to do that, ought fund vitalazi. How would the public suffer when the money budgeted for does the thing it is budgeted for? Because this money, if it was
so you would consider the expenses of the incoming MPs as a natural disasters or something like that?
No, don't underrate the magnanimity of His Excellency the President when he chooses to do something and is the fountain of honor. Me, I cannot come here and disparage it. If he has broken the law, let the members of parliament legitimately raise the questions in parliament. If it is an audit query, let the Auditor General raise it. Because the president has made a decision. So can I come and here on the radio and challenge it?
So you expect the people who received the money and the Auditor General is in the office of the same institution, Parliament, to raise questions?
Was the Auditor General a beneficiary of that money?
It's an office of Parliament.
Yes, that's why he was chosen to do that work. Let him do his work. If there is any problem that comes up, let him write a report to Parliament and then members of Parliament will discuss it and see whether it is suitable. But for me, I know that the president did not dip his hand like he wanted to impute. The president has chosen to use those resources as they had been budgeted for, because if they did come to the members of parliament, perhaps the president would have donated it somewhere else. The president has been donating so many things. Has donated the religious leaders. Some of our opposition politicians were here lamenting that the president is buying religious leaders. But are the religious leaders taxpayers? If the opposition members themselves go and receive IPOD money, why shouldn't a faith receive a contribution from government? Because they are also taxpayers. They are part of the public, and we must go with the challenges that we have in order, and at one time in the future, I believe, when everybody understands and appreciates the challenges that we have, progressively harmony will be established. But for now, the president, having been in power for this long, he appreciates the challenges that members of parliament go through, the many religious leaders go through, and other faiths, and individuals who have been assisted either to go for personal surgery or for personal medication, or when they lose their dear ones and they run to the president to help them. This is something that the president has done. So if you haven't benefited, perhaps let us strengthen. Let the members of parliament who benefited the money when they reach parliament do a good job and do public works so that the members of the public can benefit from those. But those who also have challenges and they can access to the president, you had the social media groups led by Mr. Kasuku. They also went and met the president, and the president donated to them. I didn't hear you complaining. The other day, he had women groups. We have women, most members of the Muslim group of the women. They visited the president, and the president made a contribution. So it depends on those who have challenges, and they go to the president, and going to the president when he has the budget to do so. There are many people who go there, perhaps when the budget is exhausted. The members of parliament are just lucky that could be the president's donation budget was still available, or the party still had the money and the president directed that such money be used to pay off the members of parliament. Whichever the source was, this is what the president saw fit, and is not a form of corruption.
Mr. Chemonges, you've had a rebuttal from Honorable Dombo. What will be your last take on this issue?
For me, probably my question to Dombo is that the rest of us who do not have access to the president, what should we do? There are so many other Ugandans that do not have access to the president, would wish to get to the president.
Oh, you want to
request for this money.
You want to go there?
Benefit to be part of these benefits that
I can see Dombo is noting down your name.
Yeah, so it
indicates
that without limited access, if we do not have structured way of engagement, if we do not have systems that are institutionalized to enable deal with these problems, if there's a problem that members of parliament have, and you've been there, it is true that MPs deal with challenges before they get to parliament. They eventually get parliament, they have problems. They get out of parliament when they're absolutely poor, and they come to join us in again crying. That's if they don't get an opportunity to go back to parliament.
Isn't that a personal responsibility issue?
It is.
How you manage your finances?
It's a systemic issue.
Managing success?
No, it's a systemic issue because you see, again, and not to find myself to defending members of parliament, but being the elective politics in our country is extremely expensive, and that if you are not careful, you are likely to find yourself in a place where you use over and above what you have to get into these positions. And it's you find if you assess the cost-benefit analysis of being an MP vis-a-vis what you are spending, you see that the economics of scale don't make. So I think for me, first of all, is to challenge the concept around everyone wanting to go and engage the president to benefit from this. There has to be systems, there has to be structured, and to the extent that those do not appear today, it means that what is happening seems to be serving directly the interest of the president or those around him. Of course, the other is around the question of transparency and where this money is coming from. It is true that Dombo indicates that it could be from this source. It's also very unclear in terms of what he's indicating. And all these are assumptions, really. So there's a bit of unclarity in terms of where this money is coming from, whether it is a bribe, whether it is simply magnanimity of the president. And because of the kind of politics we have, where the party, the government, the state seems to be one and the same thing, it means that the resources equally fall in the same problem. That at many times you'll see the resources of the party being used in the work of government, and vice versa. So, so it's a confused state of affairs as we are in. And to that end, it means that public resources are likely to be misused and probably being already misused, and the question of accountability. The other is for me around the concept of institutions, because I think that we must allow institutions to operate as the way they are designed. If we place members of parliament to be in a state where they are greatly compromised, either through the resources or through the power that they operate in, you see that most of these institutions become subservient to an individual, and which affects the operation of the country. If you have an arm of government, parliament in this case, which is a representative and has a very special place in the representative nature of our country, where the voice of the people, whether in terms of resources, whether in terms of the issues that we are dealing with, and the citizen sees 40 billion shillings being simply given to members of parliament. And yet the lived realities of a day-to-day Ugandans are struggles that we see. We see that we are struggling to raise these resources. Our amounts that we are able to even mobilize locally are not significant enough to fund our budget. It raises fundamental questions. A citizen in Kampala, for example, who is being sent away from the street, and they are really trying to make the ends meet. What kind of messaging do you think comes to mind when you see an MP being promised 100 million shillings? You have citizens in far areas, in Karamoja, in Sebeyo, in many of these other places, cannot access healthcare, cannot access education. We literally have children who are still studying under trees. We have places that do not have access to healthcare is still a big problem. And when you see that and see what is happening at a national level, 100 million being given to each of the members of parliament, yet they could still by the way operate within the dynamics without being given money. So I think that we have to step back and see our priorities and see where is the citizen at the end of this. I do recognize the need to ensure that members of parliament are cushioned, members of parliament are in a state they are able to deliver their responsibilities. But when it comes to resources, when it comes to how we dispense with public resources, I think there is need for more caution, there is need for more in terms of understanding where we are at, in terms of the challenges that we are dealing with. And so for me, that's where, and maybe when Dombo said he saw one of the media houses saying this was a breaking news. In fact, this is more than breaking news, because you see, if member of public sees 100 million shillings, which may actually just sound 100 million shillings, it's a lot of money in our current context. The recent study by BOU says that you have less than 1% who earn 1 million shillings, at least as of what is on record. What do you think goes on in the mind of an ordinary person? A daily teacher who earns maybe 400,000, and you see a member of parliament
who is already well paid.
Yeah. So I think that there is a fundamental problem, Mr. Dombo, and even when there could be ways we can explain this and wish it away, there's a fundamental problem in the country on how we are using resources in terms of our priority as a country, but also more importantly, the respect of institutions and an ability to allow them to operate as they should operate.
All right. Honorable Dombo, would you like to respond to that? Priorities, how
I wish to agree with my brother that we have systemic challenges, especially in the way our members of parliament, the way the public perceives what they're supposed to do. Because in one of the meetings, when the Minister for Health came out to tell us the number of ambulances expected to be bought over the 5 years, one of the members of parliament proposed that they should also put pickups so that they could serve as funeral vehicles. Because one of the biggest heavy expenses the members of parliament go through is for them to transport either bodies in their respective constituencies or helping people with the similar services. You remember when Honorable Mike Mukula was the Minister of State for Health, they imported the ambulances, pickups for ambulances from the the money which had been gotten from the Global Fund. When I tried to inquire the logic behind it, somebody told me that the biggest supplies in the health centers are transported on pickups other than the patients who are transported to the hospitals. He said, so if the pickup could also be transformed to be able to carry patients, it could also help to transport drugs and other supplies within the communities. So where you get a member of parliament asking for funeral vans so that they can be relieved, then you can see the challenges that we have.
I think the biggest discussion would be, why do members of public want to rely on MPs? What is that is pushing them to look at the MPs as the people who should solve their problems?
The problem starts with MPs themselves before they become members of parliament. In order for them to undermine the incumbents so that they can take over those seats, they begin promising heaven on earth, and they sooner than later discover that they can only afford hell. So when you afford hell and you promised heaven, then the challenge is you begin running up and down, and others end up in the banks. Others use the pseudo ways to access money, like those members of parliament who are arrested trying to get a percentage of the budget. These are challenges that continue happening and affecting our people. So the president did not bribe members of parliament because there was nothing to bribe for. But the president was aligning his troops to ensure that they understand the challenges that we have, they understand the priorities of government, so that when they come and begin discussing and deciding for us in the places where they are conscious that there is corruption, and if they are not careful, they will end up prison like their predecessors, but also that they need to be cautious so that they don't end up prison.
All right. Spectrum Extra on Radio 1 FM 90. We've been joined by our third panelist, that is Dr. Sarah Bireete, Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Sarah Bireete.
Thank you for...
After quite some time.
Yeah, I was forced into leave by Honorable Dombo and his regime through the Aburuto Act, but I'm glad to be back. Yeah.
All right.
Honorable Sarah.
You found us discussing the issue of Kyankwanzi. Can you share with us quickly before we go for this break? What caught your eye? Maybe what surprised you, or what came out?
Good for any political group to set their legislative agenda at the beginning of tenure of office. So, in principle, what the NRM party was doing is okay. The only problem I have with the reservations on Kyankwanzi, of course, they've been going there for the last 40 years. Kyankwanzi is a national institute funded by government, taxpayers' money. When it's being used by a political party, do they pay, refund our money? Do they go to use my taxes with a non-member of NRM to do their political work? Because they are in habit of using public institutions, including meetings, party meetings at State House. And of course, there is hijack of public spaces. We, as civil society leaders, we apply to Kyankwanzi to do our own retreat, because we also do retreats. But we never got a response. If you look at the usage of Kororo, it's as if it's a monopoly of government. These are civic spaces. That's where everybody who wishes to use these spaces should be enabled to do so. So NRM should not monopolize Kyankwanzi. It is a public facility that should be used by all other parties if they wish to. When you look at the donning military uniforms, we have about 100 members of the National Unity Platform. I'm not accurate about the number, facing court petitions, court trials over military drills for simply wearing their red attire and saluting their president on his birthday. But we saw military drills in Kyankwanzi. in uniforms branded UPDF, not NRM attire.
With the authority of the minister. That's what the law says. You must get authority before you do military drills. Maybe they got the authority.
He will tell us.
Okay.
But before they've been doing it, donning UPDF, their things are written on UPDF. They are not members of UPDF, donning military stores, when the other opposition parties are languishing in jail for wearing their own attire and joining a parade like school children. So those are the double standards you see in Kyankwanzi. The resolutions of Kyankwanzi, will they fulfill them? High on the agenda was the fight against corruption. But also their chairman, as he was telling other MPs, that whoever gives a bribe and receives a bribe is also corrupt. He bribes the MPs. On the UPDF Amendment Act, he put it in writing that he had sent 100 million on a Buru State House headed paper, that he had sent 100 million to MPs. That's a bribe, because MPs are paid by a taxpayer to do their work, including public participation.
He didn't state that he was bribing.
No, but he confirmed that he had paid them 100 million for UPDF law. Why do you pay MPs to make laws? Yet that's their duty, and they are already paid by a taxpayer. That's why what makes it a bribe. And he confirmed that he had given that money. So, but also in the same Kyankwanzi meeting, he explained how he has power to forgive corruption, forgiving this MP for massacre, the 3 MPs who were involved in budget corruption. The president does not have power to forgive crimes. The president has power on exercising prerogative of mercy after the court process has been exhausted. But interfering with the independence of judiciary, blocking court processes like Amos Rugorobi, where even the court had confirmed that there is a case to answer, then you say, I have forgiven them. So the sloganeering that they are going to fight corruption is just mere slogan. I don't think that they can fight corruption.
All right, Spectrum X on Radio 1 FM 90. We're going to take a break. When we return, we'll open up the discussion on the protection of the National Sovereignty Bill 2026, a bill that is raising a number of concerns from different stakeholders as we continue looking at the major events of the week. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90, because we'll be continuing after. But we're glad that you're still with us on Spectrum Extra, live on Radio 1 FM 90, reviewing major events of the week. My name is Kenneth Anderson Lukwago, your host. My guest this evening, the Honorable Emmanuel Lumala Dombo, Director of Communications at the NRM Secretariat, former Winyole East MP. We have also been joined by Dr. Bireete, Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance, Pandit on Governance and Human Rights Issues, and Mr. Chemonges, Executive Director, Parliamentary Watch at the Center for Policy Analysis. Keep your comments coming by the WhatsApp line 0703 090 090. After this round of submission, I will be sampling some of your comments. We are now shifting our gears. I know, Honorable Dombo, you want to respond on a number of issues. I'll give you an opportunity after a substantive submission on this issue of the Protection of National Sovereignty Bill 2026, which was eventually tabled in Parliament despite calls from different stakeholders to drop it. The NRM Parliamentary Caucus has already backed this law. One of the key issues here, you can be jailed for 20 years for breaching the contents of this law or pay a fine of 2 billion shillings or both. Some people have been saying this is an NGO law, but from the analysis being done, even the media itself, if you're found for publishing information considered damaging the country's economic system, you will be dealt with. Media and financial analysts could be also targeted by this. So it has been widely argued that this law affects everybody. But let's begin with one of the key stakeholders who has been in the news, urging Parliament to actually drop this bill. And I want to begin with you, Dr. Bireete. The Protection of the National Sovereignty Bill 2026 is already in Parliament. A notice has been issued for stakeholders to go and present their views. Will you be among those to go to Parliament to submit your views? But also, what is your take on this particular bill?
Well, if I may start with the bill, the title sounds so good, and I think, having read both the draft released on 23rd March and the bill as tabled in Parliament 2 days ago, I am confident that the only good thing in this law is the title, Protection of Sovereignty. When you look at the object of the bill, protection of the bill seeks, or the long title, the bill seeks to, provide for sovereignty of the people of Uganda, designate department responsible for peace and security, register and regulate foreigners and related matters. Whenever there is any situation of lawmaking or legislation, the question that the drafters usually ask is, what is the lacuna? Or what vacuum exists that you are trying to cure? And this bill lists 3 issues as part of the problem that they think they are trying to cure. And these include interference with development and implementation of government policies and programs, foreign aid to civil society for governance, and use of online platforms by foreigners and agents of foreigners. Furthermore, there is inadequate regulation of civil society. The bill says so. In law, if there is a lacuna, for example, civil society, there is a lacuna with the regulation of civil society. We have the NGO Act that has been amended 2024. We have NGO regulations, we have NGO policy, but also the NGO Act is not implemented in isolation. It's implemented together with other laws, including the Anti-Money Laundering Act and Anti-Terrorism Act in regulating financial flows. Banks that receive funding from abroad are regulated under the Banking Institutions Act and also Bank of Uganda Act, the supervisor of the banking sector. So when you say that there's a lacuna with the regulation of civil society, can you state that lacuna? And then can you go and visit these laws and see and cure that lacuna in these laws through amendment? If you want to regulate and cross civil society, go in the NGO Act and put that. If you want to deregister civil society in Uganda, go to the constitution, amend it, and say there will be no civil society in Uganda. But hide behind protection of sovereignty that you want to control civil society. Why don't you go to the law managing civil society and amend it and put whatever you want to put? Away from that, there are 2 dangerous definitions that are far broad, restrictive, overreaching, that will cross the social, economic, and political space in Uganda. First is, who is a foreigner? The bill says a foreigner includes a non-Ugandan citizen. That's a given. A Ugandan citizen residing outside Uganda. Even you, Kenneth, if you traveled to Kenya today, tomorrow you will be declared a foreigner, because it does not take how many days or period you have to reside outside the country. So when you cross our border, you will be a foreigner according to this law. Because unless you go and come back, you don't spend the night.
Doesn't it?
There is no time period. Any Ugandan residing outside Uganda. So we are seeking to declare over 1 million Ugandans living in diaspora stateless. We are seeking to declare Ugandan students studying abroad stateless. We are seeking to declare people who go abroad seeking treatment stateless. We are seeking to declare people who engage in transnational trade to start debating whether they are citizens whenever you leave the country and enter. Because the law does not state residing in Uganda to do what, for what period, all those details do not exist. The law just says any Ugandan residing outside Uganda is considered a foreigner. Our constitution in Articles 9 to 15 categorically states who is a Ugandan by citizenship, and the different categories of citizenship, and how one can lose citizenship. This is not one of them, that whenever you travel and leave your country, you lose your citizenship. So it's unconstitutional. The law says government, consulate, of course, diplomatic missions, these are foreign entities, that's a given. A corporation, company, NGO, or any legal entity incorporated and incorporated or registered outside Uganda is a foreigner. An international or multinational organization is a foreigner. Person, institution that the minister may deem fit can be declared a foreigner. So even when you don't travel, Kenneth, the minister can decide and say from now on, you are a foreigner. This is what the road says in its interpretation section. When you got who is an agent of a foreigner, an agent of a foreigner means a person who acts as an agent, representative, employee, servant, or any person who acts in any other capacity at the order, request, or under the direction or control of a foreigner, or a person or any of whose activities are directly or indirectly supervised, controlled, financed by a foreigner. We have declared Ugandans working in diaspora foreigners. These people, through remittances, only last year sent up to $2.5 billion back as remittances. This is family support for their parents and grandparents and siblings. This is money for development. This is money for school fees. This is money for medical care coming in from what we normally call Nkubacheyo. Some are called Kadamas. Some are just called diaspora, like in the US and wherever. So we are saying these people are foreigners. And the money they sent back, now the $2.5 billion, is foreign funding. And for a grandmother to receive money from a Kadama working in UAE, the grandmother has to go and apply to the minister to be licensed as an agent of a foreigner in order to receive money for medical care from their grandchildren working in UAE as a Kadama. What does this mean? That we are likely to have these old judges in the villages being arrested for receiving money when they are unlicensed. Because most of them most likely would not know. Two, we have failed as a country, especially under 40 years of NRM, to provide proper social protection for the vulnerable, elderly, and poor families or low household income families. These families are only affording decent care through their children who suffer in the United Arab Emirates and other countries, working to take care of their parents and siblings. Now we are putting a punishment that if you travel, you are working in Dubai, you are a foreigner. You want to send money to your mother, you need a license of a minister, and you must give accountability. So a grandmother is in the hospital, and the hospitals cannot treat you until a deposit is paid. Media has been reporting about women who die in labor because the nurses refuse to touch them. There is no money. Assuming that the husband of this woman in labor is abroad, then the woman is in labor. The hospital can't treat them. This woman in labor requires a license of a minister to receive money from her husband who is working in Abu Dhabi, to be able to be attended to as she gives birth. There is no timeline when the minister should respond to license a foreign agent to receive money from their children or husbands. That's how crazy this law can be. Away from the Ugandans in diaspora who are going to be rendered stateless, you have tourism. I think we received about 1.8 million tourists in the last year. And our tourism had gone up, had started shooting up. Now you are saying that for a tourist in Europe to book a trip with a tour agent here in Uganda, because they book through payment, the agent has to first go and be licensed as a foreign agent. Otherwise, if the tour agent receives money from an intending tourist, she can be arrested for 20 years or be fined. That tour agent can be fined 2 billion as a person. If it's a company, it's 4 billion, or they can be arrested for 20 years. That's got coffee export business. All our coffee exporters have foreign companies, I think about 90%, including the name that sounds local, Kyankwanzi Coffee. It's a British company. This Kyankwanzi Coffee has to now register as a foreign agent, be licensed in order to buy coffee. Because this is money from British. So that will also affect our coffee revenues in the country. When you go to the banking sector, all people, Ugandans working in banks, have to be licensed every 2 years as agents of foreigners. Because with the exception of 3 banks, all our banks here are foreign. The 3 banks which are indigenous, Post Bank, Centenary, and Pride, they also use MasterCard and Visa, and they have Western Union outlets, making them foreigners. So all our banking sector is going to be rendered foreigners. The workers there, including a cleaner, have to be licensed as foreign agents, and the staff, if there is any breach of due diligence, or if a grandmother receives money for medical care without the license of a minister, a direct in the bank can be arrested for 20 years or be fined. The bank can be fined 4 billion or both. That is how absurd this law is.
All right, Dr. Sarah Bireete, I have a feeling that after a law is passed, they normally come up with regulations which guide the implementation of this particular law. Don't you get a feeling that probably some of these issues will be outlined? For instance, if I'm a Ugandan and I'm working abroad, maybe I should not be classified as a foreigner because I'm not residing. I've not taken up permanent residency. I'm not a citizen of the other country. So the regulations probably will create a leeway to say a Ugandan working abroad sending money to a relative, that money is not considered as a transmission of money from an agent. Don't you think the regulations will probably address some of these issues?
Kenneth, this is a government law.
Mm.
It's been introduced by government in parliament. It has passed through stages of cabinet, NRM caucus approval. It's a government law.
Mm.
So the assumption is that this is a law by the Attorney General, who is the chief legal advisor of government. The questions that we must interrogate is, what are his intentions?
What's the mischief, according to you?
I don't see it. That's why I went through the purpose, the purpose of the law. If you want to cross civil society, go in the constitution and cross them. Go in the NGO Act and cross them. But stop crossing the sector, the economic space in Uganda. If the problem of this regime are NGOs, I want to invite the regime to go to the constitution in the democratic principles and directives of state policy, objectives 5 and 6, and they remove civic organizations. Go and delete Article 38 of the Constitution and other related articles, including Article 17, that mandates that citizens must participate in their governance.
All right. Let's move on and hear from Mr. Timothy Chemonges. Very quickly, your thoughts on this particular bill. What do you make of it? And probably if you can tell us what you've heard in the corridors of Parliament on this particular issue.
Thank you, Anderson. I think that the law as it is one that probably, from my view, I'll treat it as one of those laws that are redundant and seek really to address no mischief, because it's a very sad state of affairs, and I absolutely agree with what Sarah highlights, that the bill as it is now is very draconian, and it's a more economic bill than it is a bill that seeks to control civil society, as the narrative seems to be. If you look at the definitions of who a foreigner is, if you see the definition of who an agent is, if you see the component around the penalties that are being suggested in the bill, I don't know how many people can afford 1 billion if you fall within the purview of the law. Those are quite...
well, the law is supposed to deter. You read the fines, you keep away from committing the crime.
Yeah, and that's true, but I think if you look at the way the law is designed, it is really aimed at really managing a situation that is not there. So I think for me is maybe to engage, to talk directly to the policymakers and to people like Dombo here, who speak for the party and are involved in the policy making process.
You have the microphone.
Is that law, as you consider passing or making any law, the thinking is, what how would you respond if you're on the other side? Would you celebrate and probably encourage the passing of the law? Because if you look at the design of how the law is today, Dombo, you can actually qualify to be a victim of this law.
Doesn't he have children outside Uganda? They are going to be stateless.
So you have children who qualify to be foreigners, and the concept around how the law is designed is not appropriate. Two is that irrespective of whatever we wanted to address, I think there are better ways in which could be addressed other than the route that you are taking. There are already existing laws, as Sarah indicates. If we want to manage the inflows and the outflows of resources, we already have a legal framework around that area. If we want to control how NGOs probably are bringing resources, so we already have a proper legal framework in place that probably could leverage on as opposed to bringing a law. For me, again, Anderson, what worries me is that for all the members of parliament that I have engaged with, they seem not to even understand what the law is about. They have not yet read the law. And most of them are those from NRM. They pass this in caucus. Their understanding of what is happening seems to be very limited. Yet they will go and pass this law. Very draconian, and they seem to be supporting it. And so for me is indicating all the components that Sarah indicates about this law are true. But also even if they are true, they pass to be true because of the vagueness of this law, that any interpretation can pass. And so the other component probably that I needed to just add emphasis on is on what Sarah says around the powers that the minister is granted under this law. It gives the minister so much power that if not checked, he can misuse them. But also, if you look at the designing of and the wording of the law, no time limits. It says that the minister could determine all these factors. So there is a problem. Too much power in this case to a specific individual may not be. And for me, it is not really even argue this clause says this, because from the start, it's a useless law and it is a redundant law. And that's the starting point that we should have. But more importantly, I think that to the people out there listening to us, this law has a direct impact in how you conduct yourself and deal on your day-to-day life. It's not an issue of NGO or a specific group of people. You can fall to be a victim of this law. It's the same thing with the legislators. And so there is need for us to step back and reflect this beyond the party lines, beyond the affiliations in which we are in, and more importantly, look at what this law really seeks to address.
All right. We've been joined by our fourth panelist, the Honorable Paul Mwiru. He is the MP-elect for Jinja Southeast. He's a lawyer and coordinator of the National Unity Platform Party in Busoga region. Good evening, Honorable Paul Mwiru. Thank you very much for keeping time.
Thank you, and good evening, listeners. I think we need to go for a constitutional interpretation. When they say that the president has the right of way, does it include stopping all vehicles? If he's setting off from Jinja, that you have to wait until he passes? I think we need a constitutional interpretation as to whether. Stuck on the road. Yes, and you don't know what is taking place. You see the guy holding guys stand. Then because we also need to, because to me the right of way, I perceive it to be, when the president is coming, I give way. But from what actually is happening, it's like maybe when he's setting off from wherever, maybe he's setting off from Jinja, they can stop you on any vehicle from moving until actually he can. But that is now part of the bigger problem we've been talking about.
So the reason you're late to this show is because it was the presidential motorcade.
You want to interfere with the sovereignty of the country.
You see? Because at the end of the day, there must be a debate. The right of way does not really extend to that. What he is doing, in my view, actually is outside what is supposed to be, what's supposed to be done. And it's not the first time. As he wakes up in the interview, they broke all the roads. You wait, he has a shower, he takes the... When you are waiting on the road, and yet he survives on our taxes, us who are going to work. But you see, that is part of... Uganda is like a big accident scene. That's why when I was coming, I had my brother Dombo defending the budget corruption. When we know when a leader is transactional, you cannot question which transaction has engaged in because it is expected. And I think Dombo agrees with me. I don't want to go into that direction.
Well, you found us when we are dealing with the issue of the sovereignty. Very quickly, let's hear your thoughts in 5 minutes, because we want to give Honorable Dombo an opportunity to respond to some of the issues that you're putting across.
Well, I'm happy that the proponents of the bill used to stay out of the country at a time when they were trying every humanly possible by then to come and liberate themselves. Meaning that if those people who are in charge, if they thought of enacting a law in that direction, maybe it would have caught up with them in the same way. But two, and the most important, as the colleagues had said, I came on listening. When you are drafting as a drafter, you don't target an individual. You see this, you don't target Bobby Wine, that now that he's out of the country, he should not return. You understand? Now we are targeting, when you deal with the mischief.
Who told you they are targeting Bobby Wine? There are so many Ugandans.
Actually, the bill only fell short of actually calling it a Bobby Wine bill. Because you see, like in the definition, I'll give an example. Even my brother here is going to defend it. In your business, you may be an agent of a foreign. You may wind up very soon. I know he's scared. I know he's scared. But
you know him so much that most of us
I know he doesn't believe in what actually, in whatever is taking place.
So as a lawyer, as a political leader, what's your take on this bill?
You see, as the colleagues have said, the law must address a mischief. A colleague was telling me that, okay, you ask for a cabinet memoranda of that bill. Because the way the bills are actually initiated, they're initiated by cabinet memoranda to cabinet, where someone who gives the object, addresses the mischief the bill is intended to serve, and it cannot be that we're targeting some individuals. The danger of all this, that once we take this path, to me this is just like we're coming to the tail end of a complete capture of every institution, to the extent that now Parliament is fused with the executive, with the judiciary. The judiciary had been weaponized, that if you are arrested like now, they have instructions that they cannot grant me bail. Whether I merit, whether I have substantial reasons, when I don't have anything. My sister here tested it. The instruction is that when you go, that's what should happen.
Was she acquitted?
Now that at that end, maybe that was not enough. Now they're looking for another angle. That how do we now weaponize now the law to the extent that we can target particular individuals? In legislation, when we are making laws, we cannot make a law for Dombo. Because Dombo has annoyed me, I need to make a law to deal with him.
They said the law must be blind.
Blunt. Blind or blunt. It doesn't need to have eyes to see that I'm targeting Dombo. You see, history repeats itself. We have ever the deportation, the detention without trial. The Vingira case. To me, it's like, but you can only summarize and say this like, when there's a big accident scene, the way things are happening, the way they are, that even those who would have expected it to rise, like my brother here, Dombo, was a senior backbencher. When he rose, he would rise in the parliament. And once you saw him standing, everybody would wait to see what the other Dombo is saying. So we are time bank on you. And so because like my brother Dombo would what we were told, that the day this bill was introduced in the NRM caucus, there was a lot of hunger. Because at first they were targeting the bloggers after the court had thrown out. They will come up with something where at least they will deal with the kadamas. But at the end of the day, this bill has an effect of affecting all of us. Because I know our grandparents and mothers and they're in the villages, they receive money. And actually, even this sovereignty bill, if we brought in the real context, because even like the president, I think he's the chief agent of imperialism here, isn't it? As we have always loved to be sovereign as a country. has remained as the chief agent of imperialism.
You have given him the powers to deal on your behalf with other countries. So
well,
probably
we have our own views about imperialism, but simply because they have been taking that direction. And here in Uganda now, of course, there's nothing which will not. Now, like they brought a bill, they're calling for views next week. The put and proper thing to do would be to gather views. You understand, of the members. And now that he has made a deposit on the MPs, those on which are coming.
You will keep dangling the balance.
And you see, he has made deposit on these one who are coming, but what we also gather, that there is also an arrangement for these one who are going to pass that bill. And most of them, some of them
To
didn't.
bribe them,
Most of them didn't go through. So they would be looking at a retirement package because they seem to be in dire need. So they can pass anything. The other time, actually, I don't know whether Dombo has a copy of that. They even have some constitutional amendments where they want to extend the term to 7 years. But they want to work on it before, as the president swears in the 7-year term. So they say, you see,
But you got elected.
well, on the other papers, we saw 2 constitutional amendment bills that they don't clearly state.
no, they will come.
what
Actually,
they are about.
Madam Sarah Bireete, you will be shocked what we have gathered. You see, we have always argued that you cannot benefit as a parliament from what you have passed. Now, what are they planning to pass it in this term? So that as he goes to be sworn, he say, I'm swearing in another term, the other was different term. But whatever it is, President Museveni was in Sweden and the wife. And most of the collaborators, they
External
did it,
wing.
But as of then, you can pass this Honorable Dombo today, and we take power the following week, and you'll be further.
All right.
But one thing I want to...
We need to go for a quick break. When we return, I will allow you 1 minute to wind up, and then we'll go to Honorable Dombo. But also, we have comments coming in from the listener who has been with us since the beginning of this particular program. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. We'll be back after this break. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Spectrum Extra live on Radio 1 FM 90. Full panel, the Honorable Emmanuel Lumala Dombo, Director of Communication at the NRM Party Secretariat, the Honorable Paul Mwiru, MP-elect Ginger Southeast, lawyer and coordinator of the National Unity Platform Party in Busoga Region, Dr. Sarah Bireete, Chief Executive Officer at the Center for Constitutional Governance, Pandit on Governance and Human Rights Issues, Mr. Timothy Chemonges, Executive Director, Parliamentary Watch, and at the Center for Policy Analysis. My name is Kenneth Anderson Lukwago, your host, and we are now looking at the issue of the National Sovereignty Bill, which was tabled in Parliament. And I want to give Honorable Paul Mwiru just 1 minute to wind up your submission,
Yes.
and then we'll go to Honorable Dombo.
We were in Parliament. You know, if you read the Constitution, it had the categories of Ugandans. It had by birth, by naturalization, by descent, and by registration.
And the dual citizenship.
There's even dual citizenship.
They went ahead and deleted the by descent. So I raised it one time in Parliament that I'm Ugandan by descent. How did you delete without any process? We were at it over a period of time. When I went to apply for a passport, to renew my passport, I was supposed to tick. I added that I'm Ugandan by descent. Then they told me, no, this one doesn't exist. I said, no, for me, I'm for Ugandan by descent. I'm not Ugandan by birth, by registration. You understand? Or by naturalization, because I understand all the categories. We argued with the officer. Of course, and then I went to the minister. They said, if you don't, and the minister told them, but if he's saying Ugandan by descent, you register him as such. That's what it is. That's what he is. But now I see the effect of what is taking place in our country. That people who don't love their country are now telling us that they have come with a bill protecting the sovereignty. They did not. In 1980, you know, there was a time when they were recruiting people in the Uganda police force. And some of them, those who are now in the army today, they were refused from registering in the force. They said they were not Ugandans. The rationale was simple, that you not pay allegiance to 2 countries, where you originate from, and then and then Uganda. So whatever is taking place now, I can only say it is like comedy. Because you see, we keep on reflecting, and then say, when you talk to some of our colleagues who are even within the government, they also are at a loss. They also don't understand what is taking place. When you talk to the people, they also realize there's a problem.
All right.
But what we have as of now is to rise, add our voice on those who are saying that, look, there's a problem, there's no mischief this bill intends to cure, and that whatever transaction is taking place in the country, we desist it, we detest it, so that at a particular point in time, they cannot say that where were you when all this was taking place? We raised our voices.
All right. Let's go to Honorable Dombo. Very quickly, your quick thoughts on this particular bill, having heard from the different stakeholders on this table.
You know, Bwana Lukwago, the Constitution gives the members of Parliament powers to make laws for the good governance and development of this country. And the government has proposed the law, and it's before members of Parliament. If government had prevented the due process, that people are not going to take their views, I would have come here and complained. But government has presented a bill, Clerk Parliament has invited these views, which Madam Sarah Bireete is giving on the spectrum. Let her take them to Parliament before the committee. And then the minister or the proponents of the bill will come and answer these questions. These are legitimate questions. But in this short time, I have not had an opportunity to read the entire bill. But I was present in the caucus when the Minister of State for Internal Affairs, General Mhozi, came up to give the background to the bill and why it is necessary members of Parliament to support the positions as espoused here. Some of the things that the minister said is that there is an attempt by foreign agents and foreigners to interfere in the governance of many countries. You heard in the elections in the United States of America, when everybody was accusing Russia, that Russia tried to interfere in the process of the elections. We know that foreign governments try to interfere for reasons that we may not know here, but they may perhaps interfere because they want to undermine a specific government. They may not be interested in a specific regime, or they may be interested in the natural resources that we have, or they may want to export their culture from their respective countries. You have heard here when the members of Parliament were prevented to travel because some of them opposed the LGBT, whatever it is.
Anti-homosexuality law.
I can't. So, this confusion here, in order to protect our sovereignty, protect our culture, protect the integrity of our people, and also protect the way we do things. So, the bill here clearly states that the objectives of the bill, and says the objective, the remedies proposed in the bill, they are stated here in the bill, and also what is meant by protection of the bill is clearly stated in the bill. Whether it is sufficient or not, that is what Parliament is going to be considering, and I would invite my colleagues here, Honorable Mwiru, Madam Sarah Bireete, because you are an expert in constitutional governance, get before Parliament so that you get through this. But whether we like it or not here, we know that foreigners, by whatever name defined, many have been trying to interfere with what governments do, either by sponsorship of agents. When you read books about espionage, and you see how Bin Laden was hunted in Pakistan, and what exercises they were doing, the people who are interfering in intelligence, they went first off to do vaccination. Yet they were collecting data about what was taking place, and they wanted to get the DNA on the head of the people where that man Bin Laden had been hidden.
You have already signed a deal with the U.S., the health.
We also know.
Where our DNA
we also
is
know.
Taken.
Yeah, but when something is done in national interest, that's why it must be done through government. And that's what this bill is trying to cure. To say, why do you want to do what government is supposed to do? By purporting to say you are trying to help the people of Uganda, but you don't want the government to know what exactly is happening. If you are bringing in money here, and it is intended to benefit the people of Uganda, why don't you want government to know how much money you are bringing in? Right. Why do you bring it behind the table? And at the end of the day, this money may be to fund insurrection, this money may be to destabilize the government, or money to create terrorism within the country. So these views are legitimate, which government put up in that meeting. But also the questions you are asking are legitimate. Supposing that came out, what should it be? The solution cannot be on this talk show. The solution lies in the Committee of Parliament and the Parliament of Uganda, which is mandated to make good laws for the governance of Uganda and the development of this country. Please go there, and for us, we shall be listening. Once the bill is passed, it will be our duty to explain the people.
Honorable Dombo, some basic questions put across this table. One of them, we have different laws, including that deal with movement of illicit money, Anti-Money Laundering Act. We have so many other laws, including those that guide the operation of NGOs. Is it your view as former legislators, somebody who follows contemporary issues in this country, that there are no sufficient laws to deal with the issues that have been raised?
The minister, during the presentation in the caucus in Entebbe, he said the existing laws are inadequate and they have not been sufficient to deal with some of the issues that have been proposed. That's why he has been decided to make this proposition. When you go to the committee, there will be a possibility of citation of the existing laws and how inadequate they may be, and why the current proposition is considered sufficient and intended to cure the gaps that may be in the existing laws. So, since there is a public hearing and has been invited, let our people who are learned go there and present their views so that the members of parliament can be helped to pass a good law for all the people of Uganda.
All right. Very quick response. Maybe I should first go to you, Dr. Sarah Bireete, since you were the first person on this issue. You've had a rebuttal from Honorable Dombo. He tells you go to the committee. You have very good views. They can help to shape the bill in the House.
Well, previously we have written memoranda to appear before the committee, and the committee never invites. Case in point is the UPDF Amendment Act and the NGO Amendment Act. We were never given opportunity to appear before the committee. So I think Honorable Dombo's submission is he thinks our parliament is still decent as it was in the 6th and 7th parliament. The leadership of parliament does not hesitate to violate the constitution and rules of procedure of parliament, which gazette 45 days as days for public participation, and they are never given. The UPDF Amendment Act was passed in a total of 5 days in violation of rules of procedure of parliament and constitutional principles. We are going to write to the committee, and I'm sure all the other affected stakeholders are going to write. I have seen analysis from creative industry. I have seen views from the tour operators. I have seen views from the diaspora, Ugandans in diaspora. I've seen views from the bankers sector. I have seen views from all the sectors I've mentioned. And I'm sure they will be sent to the committee. Otherwise, there will be no reason why these sectors are paying lawyers to systematically analyze the bill and point out the issues that will cross the economic space of Uganda. Uganda government currently is struggling to attract foreign funding because it's not regarded as creditworthy. In the outgoing, I'm coming.
Are you sure?
Let me submit. In the outgoing budget, Uganda government had intended to borrow 22.9 trillion, but they managed to get 3 trillion because of the rankings that are going down. So when you start bringing views that are likely out of 10 to 16 trillion, they managed to borrow 3 trillion and resorted to domestic borrowing. In terms of foreign lenders, the creditworthiness is down. So when you bring laws that are likely to, first of all, put Uganda on the grey list, where you had struggled to get off from 3 years ago, you are likely to go back. When you make laws that will contradict reasonable financial principles in a democratic society, you endanger the economy of the country. When you look at the contributions from foreign inflows of about 30 to 40 trillion per year, you are likely to reduce these foreign financial inflows from the sources I've mentioned. If I am a coffee exporter, you want me to register every 2 years as a foreign agent in Uganda. Why don't I go to other countries like Ethiopia that produce also good coffee? But who will pay the price at the end of the day? It is the coffee farmer who will have no market, who will have no good prices for their coffee because of draconian legislation. There has been an argument that other countries also regulate for foreign agents. Yes. The United States has a law known as the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA. But what does this law do? This law registers non-U.S. citizens and companies or corporations outside U.S. territory that are seeking to get state funding. So if you want funding through now the former USAID as an example, you had to first get registered under the FARA Act for due diligence, and you get a number. As a foreigner, you are not a citizen of the U.S., your company is not registered in the U.S., but you want taxpayers' money, U.S. funds. So that's the purpose of FARA Act. The NRM propagandists are using it to justify their North Korea type of legislation to say that they are benchmarking from the U.S. Canada has a similar law, which is known as Bill C-70. For the same purpose, you want Canada government funding from the taxpayer, and you are not a citizen, you register. That is foreign registration. You have to get a number as a foreign agent because you're not a citizen, and neither is your company or business. But when this one is twisted to face the people, that if I have my child working in Abu Dhabi, she's sending me medical upkeep or whatever, I have to register and be licensed as a foreign agent to get money from my own child. My child has crossed the border and you are declaring them stateless. How do you compare with the FARA Act in the US or BC-70 in Canada? Rwanda has a program known as Agaciro Development Fund. It seeks to protect or enhance sovereignty in terms of funding to reduce foreign dependency as government. That's the purpose of Agaciro Development Fund. But they have it in the ministerial brief that they are benchmarking from Rwanda. Rwanda is reducing budget reliance on foreigners. Our budget is 84 trillion. Our revenues can only be 36 trillion. Where are you getting the balance? How can you compare with Rwanda, which has a smaller gap between what they produce and what they spend? When you go to Kenya, Kenya has a program known as Kazimaju. This is a program for enhancing the human rights protection of Kenyans living and working in diaspora. It has enhanced diaspora remittances in Kenya up to $5.04 billion. They are protecting their human rights. We have had people die in the Middle East. We have had people tortured. They return. We are discussing whether their organs were extracted. Kenya has enhanced diaspora workers and given them dignity as compared to others who want to extract where we don't invest. In Egypt, as I conclude, they have a similar enhancement program for diaspora workers, and they define them as national assets. Kenyan foreign remittances have reached $29.6 billion out of that enhancement. Why don't we benchmark good things?
I think
I want to read out some of the comments.
The
but
point I
quickly
think
in a few
they're making is that they are trying to prohibit and criminalize even NGOs or anybody to do work which should be done by government. I think their point is that once your daughter or son out there sends for you medical care, I think it is prohibited under the law because it is what the government would have ordinarily provided the medical care.
All right.
And have this money failed and you are getting it from your son. I think that's what Dombo.
They are hiding.
All right, we have comments coming in from the listeners. I want to begin with Ham, who is listening in from Entebbe. He said, our country is so sick. These laws they are creating meant to punish the opposition will eventually catch up with the lawmakers. They are setting traps that will eventually catch them. Ask Mama Babazi, who put some bill that later caught up with him. A.M. Seduge says, good evening, Spectrum Extra. The retreat was great. It is incumbent upon our NRM MPs to take the advice of our chairman very serious. Then we have another comment here. The history of Uganda, that's from Kauma Digo, listening in from Mitiana. The history of Ugandan parliament is like that. UPC used it as its political hand, tool, and as NRM is doing today. That reason made Idi Amin ban parliament. Kamugo Fred Keta Racing from Kira Municipality, he says, good evening, Spectrum Extra. One of the biggest problems of Uganda government is lack of prioritization of issues affecting Ugandans, and neither the executive nor parliament cares. 39 billion is equivalent to 392 classroom blocks, averagely, each district having 2 of them, but spent on non-sworn candidates. Honorable Dombo, is Nali still a national institute? If yes, why not include all MPs regardless of their political affiliation? About the National Sovereignty Bill, who is the foreigner? It may mean your daughter or son who is in Saudi sending you money and you need to get permission from the minister. In fact, it's describing Ugandans living abroad as foreigners. This is very unrealistic for Ugandans. It must be revised, otherwise the Dombos risk locking themselves inside it and conflicting with the law should it be sanctioned, making it unconstitutional. Comment comes in from Lawrence, listening it from Zigoti. Protection of Sovereignty Bill, imagine referring to a Ugandan abroad holding a Ugandan passport as a foreigner. Doesn't this violate our constitution? Where does this law leave Ugandans who are employed by multinationals? A comment from Lumbuye Lawrence, listening in from Zigoti. And somebody writes in and says, I don't blame Dombo for defending wrong because it's his work. Then we have good evening, Radio 1. Patrick Okot from Bunga says, I would like to thank all the guests in studio. President gifting NRM MPs 100 million was totally abuse of taxpayers' money. Kenneth Anderson Lukwago, what bothers me about this sovereignty bill is that he suggests that the government has not learned anything from the effects of the winding up of DGF. NGOs closed, jobs were lost, and communities were denied services. President Trump's decision to dismantle USAID exacerbated the problem. When then are we coming with a law that is going to add salt to the very fresh wounds? Fred, listening in from Gayaza. Good evening, Spectrum Extra. Message of empathy to Sarah Bireete. Being arrested and detained when you have done nothing wrong is terrifying and unfair. You don't deserve any of this. I want you to know that many citizens believe in you and are standing with you. You are not alone in this. Stay strong and your integrity will speak for you. Abim Jimmy from Mukono. Good evening, Anderson and the guests in studio. I also got disappointed in this regime because they are no longer here for ordinary Uganda but to serve the president and his wealthy class of war veterans on corruption. I really pity people who still believe Mr. Museveni has a will to fight corruption. When it's through corruption that he is holding on to power. When you hear Honorable Dombo describing how they are robbing ordinary Ugandan, just know these people are not here to serve anyone but their own party and families. Somebody writes and said, Spectrum Extra, Dr. Sarah, you are welcome. That's another listener, Lawrence, listening in from Zigoti. Chris, listening in from Chira, the monetization of expensive political dispensation in this country is a creation of the NRM government. So when citizens seeking political office enter the race, they do so at their own peril. That cost should not be shifted to us, the taxpayers. Honorable Dombo, style up with your government. Okaka John, listening in from Lira City. Good evening, my fellow citizens. President Museveni has reached to his limits. He is completely exhausted. He should be given a chance to go and look at his grandchildren. That's Okaka John, listening in from Lira City.
Okaka must be a foreigner.
Sam Okello, listening in from Kumi Spectrum Extra. It's so sad to hear President Museveni giving out money to MPs. Remember, he's the one saying stop corruption. It's State House, which always receives supplementary budgets, not Ministry of Education or Health or Agriculture. Just imagine that. Museveni can't fight corruption. It's like expecting my grandfather to resurrect. Well, we have other comments. Good evening, Spectrum Extra. I'm wondering why our educated brothers and sisters can't tell the president to invest in agriculture, given the current situation where citizens are left in the hands of middlemen who keep crying foul as they earn huge amounts of money from the sweat of the poor. Uganda's economy can't grow when we have idle citizens who are unproductive. I'm fed up with the empty promises of agriculture modernization every 5 years. Unemployment would have been a history for the 40 years. That's Mawa Amaza listening in from Moyo. Good evening, everyone in the studio. Honorable Dombo, Lumala, that's corruption. You're giving money without accountability, and it's taxpayers' money. That's a comment from Grace Commander. Well, there's so many other comments coming in, but time may not allow us, and I want to give each one of you 1 minute. Honorable Dombo, very quickly, if you can respond. Then we go around the table because time is not on our side. Very quickly, Honorable Dombo.
There is a reason why my brother and Honorable Sarah Bireete and people who reason like them have chosen to argue the politics instead of answering the. Because when the Kadamas who are sending in money here, I don't think government will do that. What I know is that there are people who have been using the lacuna in the law to bring in money here to do wrong things. Recently, the president told us of a priest who was incarcerated because money was brought in the country and the purpose was not properly declared. And he told us the priest had gone to, the bishop of Masaka had gone to Xtra to meet His Excellency the President, and also they had a discussion. These are things that are not being talked about. We also have NGOs here which have been taking people outside, sponsoring them to go and take trainings in things that may not be understood, and with the intention of undermining the sovereignty of this country. We have NGOs that have been promoting vices here that are contrary to our beliefs and our culture. We have the Church of Uganda and our religious institutions that have broken relationship with the foreign churches because they want to insist on our churches doing things that we are not supposed to do. There are vices and there are criminal intentions and nefarious intentions by some of these foreigners, and they want to use either the NGOs here or want to use the religious institutions here, or by whatever means that they may be able to access and infiltrate the minds of the people. So even when we want to argue the politics, we must accept there are vices that must be talked against, but the best place for us to do this would be in the Committee of Parliament, so that the proponents of the bill can give us their reasoning and why they have chosen to do this. My brother here asked whether accessing the president, those people who don't have access to the president, what are they going to do? When you read the Bible, Jesus came to save everybody. But it is the people who access him who are getting healed. So when you access when you access the prophet, when you access the president, there are leverages that will come your way, other than the people who don't have access. That's why people, they tell you our president so why do you think, why do you look for the Mukama? So the Mukama has advantages when you come across him, especially when he has issues that he can provide answers to that others may not have access to.
In a few seconds, Dr. Sarah Bireete.
I wish to invite Honorable Dombo to read the bill. There's nothing we are exaggerating that is not written in the bill. Its applicability under Section 2 or Clause 2 of the bill is very clear. It defines who a foreigner is, who an agent is, and it says this bill, for avoidance of doubt, applies to agents of foreigners who engage in the following: solicit, collect, disperse contributions, money from foreigners, including your children who are declared stateless.
That's intention, the intention.
I'm afraid
no.
time is not on our side to bring this discussion.
Read the bill.
I want to thank you,
Read
panelists,
the bill,
for taking time to be here, and I want to thank the listeners for contributing to this discussion. We really enjoyed some of your comments that you have brought across, and thank you so much. But the discussion on these issues will continue even in the course of the week. We'll continue looking for views from different stakeholders to see how this matter actually ends in Parliament. Thank you so much for tuning in to Radio 1 FM 90. This edition of Spectrum Extra has come to an end. We all wish you a fabulous weekend.